What's up, friends, and welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's our privilege, quite honestly, our honor to show up with you each and every week and be part of your life. And can't thank you enough for that. This week, I'm excited to sit down and kind of go into an area that is intriguing to me and something I never, I've never actually done or participated in, but I'm intrigued and I want to learn more about it. So this week I'm excited to sit down with a guest who is a certified professional hypnotist, and he uses that to be a high performance coach. He's the voice behind the Super States podcast that explores the profound impact of altered states of consciousness on personal growth and success. So, in today's world where, we're re-examining some of the stigmas we had around some of the medical uses of cannabinoids and the psilocybins and other treatments. I think it's interesting to get some professional impact or some professional advice and testimonies, and understand more of what's going on with how is this altered states of consciousness able to create personal growth and success, to create that change. And really what I'm interested in is how is that helping people deal with past traumas and overcome some of the limiting beliefs and the things that have held them back in their life. So I hope you're interested in this week's topic and really enjoy this conversation. I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are. So sit back and enjoy this week's conversation with Joshua Peters. Joshua, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. How are you today?
I'm awesome, Jerrod. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, awesome. I love when people like awesome's a good word to say how you're doing for the day.
It's one of my it's one of my favorite ways to describe how I'm doing, because I'm doing pretty good.
No, man. Yeah, awesome's a good thing, right? Like not just getting through the motions. Awesome, like almost makes other people feel like, man, I gotta step up how I'm feeling right now. Yeah, well, welcome to the show. I'm excited to explore your background and to share your story with our community. So, um, but before we do that, I like to have a little warm-up stuff, a little warm-up
Great.
session. It really gets us to know what's going on behind the person here. You ready for this?
I'm ready. Hit me.
All right, here we go. Coffee or tea? What's
Oh,
Joshua
coffee.
drinking?
I've
Coffee.
got an espresso machine.
Ooh.
I almost made an espresso right before the show, but then I thought, well, maybe I should just wait until after.
That's funny because I had a cup of coffee and I thought the same thing. I was like, all right, I'll wait for my last cup of coffee after this one.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. Favorite combination meal, Joshua? Brunch or dinner?
Brunch.
Brunch. What makes you like brunch?
Oh, I like breakfast foods. So I think the not I tend to be a late eater in the morning too. So brunch is kind of the great,
Mm.
you get coffee with it too. Speaking of coffee, so you get coffee with your brunch. Your day's still kind of starting. There's all possibilities are still there, and usually a brunch means you're eating it with somebody else. So it's
Mm.
a great connecting time.
A little community action.
Yeah.
That's good. Sunrises or sunsets?
Hmm. Sunset.
Sunset, why?
I I think I see a sunrise more than I see a sunset, but
Okay.
think it's the sunset is, to me it's like, that was a nice day, and now we're
Mm.
kind of winding down to the evening. And usually if I'm seeing a sunset, it means I'm outdoors. I'm probably not in my day-to-day working life. And so it's more I get a sense of relaxation. So
Mm.
there's a calmness to it.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right. Hardback or physical book or audiobook?
Mm. I actually like them both, and
Okay.
it kind of depends on the book. If it's a book that I'm going to want to reference a lot, it's got to be it's got to be a physical book. And in
Sure.
fact, I've bought physical books and audiobooks together and electronic books. I've bought all three before because that's how my brain wants to work. Um, I love audiobooks for when I'm driving and over a long distance, and I want to just kind of pull in a lot of information. Uh, but sometimes I don't retain it as well as when I do when I'm reading a physical copy.
Yeah, that's a big point, right? That's why I honestly I can't do audiobooks because I feel like I don't necessarily retain the information.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's more, I think it's easier to zone out on an audiobook than it is the physical book.
very totally true. I've done that many times. And then I'm like, oh shoot, I just spent 10 minutes brain dumping, wandering, and I have to rewind the book, previous chapter.
All right, Joshua, you got something pressing on your mind. You gotta get it cleared out. Do you go to music or silence to get your thoughts where you want them?
Music.
Oh, what are you gonna listen to?
Oh, I'll probably listen to some chill out music, maybe some slow dub music, some kind
Slow.
of background,
Okay.
just a steady beat, but not like anything crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one to know. How you feeling, Joshua? You warmed up, my friend?
I'm warmed up. Let's jump in.
Yeah. All right. So you're a professional hypnotist and a high performance coach. Share with me, how did you get into the line of work of being a hypnotist?
Yeah, well, I actually learned about hypnosis at the age of 13. And I learned about it from a random book in my middle school library. It taught me, and I was kind of fascinated. So my dad was an amateur magician, and not
Okay.
like he did it very much at all, but as a kid, he really was into it. And so he would do it with parties and stuff. So there's a connection between magic, performance magic and hypnosis. There's a lot of similarities there. And so I was kind of around him doing that, and I saw this book on hypnosis, and I was really curious. I learned some very simple things, basically a relaxation process, a progressive muscle relaxation, where you kind of start from the top of your head and go down to the bottom, relaxing every little bitty muscle at a time. What that does is it puts you into a calm state. It helped me fall asleep. It helped me be calm during tests and things like that. And then over time, I kind of forgot all about it and kept going through life. And then I started making a lot of choices in life by not making choices,
Mm,
and ended up at about the age of 32 in a marriage that was a bad fit with 5 kids, and living in this small town where I grew up and I never wanted to live, but I was there for 20 years. Uh, uh, and all because I was just like kind of going along with whatever was happening. And I really had felt like a victim the whole time. It's
mm,
like life would happen to me instead of me making choices.
sure.
I got to a point where it was like, I can't, I, enough is enough. This isn't working anymore. And I, I went to a seminar called Landmark Forum, which maybe you've heard of that. And in the Landmark Forum, they told me, they kind of take you into this state to talk about altered states we were
Yep.
discussing earlier. The whole thing is set up to take you into an altered state to help you break out of your patterns. And at the very height of it, I mean, I don't know if this was the height of it, but this was the thing that meant the biggest change for me. They said there isn't any meaning to life
Mm,
except the meaning that we give to things, and we can choose what that meaning is.
sure.
And that really hit home with me. So I started making choices. I quit smoking. I found a job that was closer to my home so I could be there with my kids, and it was more in alignment with my values. I filed for divorce because that it was clear that that marriage was done. I started getting involved with the community instead of feeling resistant and negative about that whole thing. And I started to change my life around. It took about 10 years to kind of dig myself out of this hole that I had created for myself. And at the end of that 10 years, I decided to move from this small town in Wisconsin up to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I live
Yeah.
now. And but I still had some kids in high school, and they didn't want to move with me. And that was really hard because
Yeah.
I really identified as dad, and I wanted to be there for my kids. Like that was one of the most important parts of my life, was being there for them. But I also knew that this move was the right thing to do. So I had this kind of conflict.
Mm.
I met a hypnotist and I worked with her to move through that fear. And again, it was just like you get to choose. So I've set up the life so it still works. So I could still be there, but I could also move. And that hypnosis helped me get over that fear in a very powerful way. When I moved up to the Twin Cities, I was looking for what I really want to do with my life, because I was working in corporate at the time. It was okay, but it just really wasn't feeding my soul. And I ran across another hypnotist, kind of just randomly. Oh, here's hypnosis again showing up in my life. And when I thought about it, I just realized if I could help other people move past these blocks faster than it took me, like literally took me like 10 years to just kind of brute force smash my way through, uh, then that would be the most empowering way I could think of to live my life. Uh, and so I did. I mentored with a hypnotist for about a year, and then I started working with friends, family, coworkers, anybody who would sit down with me and practice for about another year and a half. I started working with clients then, and after about a year and a half of building up a clientele, I was able to go full time, and then I did that in fall of 2018. So I've
Mm.
been full time since then.
So I find it interesting you said that there's a second or third time that a hypnotist crossed paths with you and you took it to be a sign that it meant something. What was it in you that was like looking for signs or that was open? Because I
Mm,
think a lot of times signs are showing up for people where we're so close or so fixated on how we think things are supposed to be, we miss them. Do
yeah.
you do you remember like a shift in your thinking as you were processing to say, wait a second, I'm just gonna be open to see what I see?
So this has been something that I have practiced for a while. So I think of this like synchronicity, right? Where
Mhm.
things happen that you could call it a coincidence, but personally, I don't believe in coincidence. And so I think of it more as this is a synchronistic thing that is going on. And if you don't have to pay attention to it, but maybe you'll benefit if you do pay attention. So I've kind of trained myself to look for things like that. And the truth is that wasn't the third time that hypnosis had occurred to me. It was many, many times
Sure.
that it had occurred over that 10 years when I was shifting out of really moving past fear. Because what happened early in my life is I was just afraid. I was afraid what people would think of me. I was afraid if I left my marriage that nobody else would want me. Like I was just really afraid and stuck because of that fear. As I started shifting through that, one of the things that I did was I got fascinated with the sideshow arts. So that is like eating fire,
Mhm.
laying on a bed of nails, escaping from a straitjacket. And hypnosis is another one of those things that's often in that same kind of realm. I mentored with a world class sideshow artist, and I built a show out of all of that. Toured it around the Midwest for basically that 10 years that I was kind of moving past this. I was training myself to face fears because these sideshow acts are not hard to do. They're just stupid. Like, who's going to put a flaming torch in their face? If you know the techniques, it's not hard to do, but the hardest thing is that you're putting a flaming torch in your face.
Right.
Uh, there's an act called the blockhead act, which is where you pound a nail into your nose. Now, our nostril has this opening. As long as you know where the opening is, you can just kind of slide it in. It's not hard to do, but you have to move past the fear of what the hell am I doing sticking a nail in my nose? And it's the same thing with laying on a bed of nails or any of these things. Like they're all walking on broken glass, another example. None of this stuff is hard to do. There's physics behind almost all of it. And if you know the physics, it's simple, but you still have to get past the mental fear
Mm.
of I'm walking my bare foot on a pile of broken glass. How many times have we been told not to do this
Right.
type of thing, right? So during all of this, I actually had a real strong interest in hypnosis as a performance element. And so I kind of had studied it a little bit then too. So hypnosis was kind of top of mind for me. It had shown up multiple times since about the age of 13. Also, I was very much into personal growth all of this time, which obviously hypnosis is a personal growth element as well.
Sure.
So I was wide open to find this synchronistic element of hypnosis. I think it was a Facebook ad that randomly showed up in my feed. And so I talked to my wife. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time, but my wife now. And funny enough, she said, okay, well, like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if this is the right thing. And she said, okay, well, close your eyes. Imagine yourself in the future working as this hypnotist, helping other people move past things. How does that make you feel? She essentially walked me through a hypnotic experience, not even realizing she was doing that, so that I could connect with who I might be in this
Mm.
kind of new career. And it was like, yes, this is it. This is it.
Mm.
So I know it's kind of a long answer for
No.
you, but I watch for synchronicities. I try to find them
Yeah.
all the time, and I'm sure I miss them as well. It's something you got to train yourself for.
Yeah, you gotta be open for it and aware. But I love what you guys just said there because I recently just did a show on this talking about your future self, the aspect of your future self.
Yeah,
And if you sit today and go, what would my future self say about my opportunities today? Right? Like
yeah.
specifically, like maybe I don't want to go work out or I don't want to read another book or I don't want to do something. Your future self would almost always be like, man, I wish I was in
What the
that
heck?
age again. I wish I could do this again. Right.
Yeah,
And I love kind of re-engineering things based off what would our future self say with today's possibilities.
yeah. Yeah, I think the future self is when I work with clients, it's one of the three keys to getting change is connecting with this you from the future who's put all of the problems in the past, who's living their best life, who's fully, trusting in themselves and confident and calm and all the things people want to be. And then we'll go to that version of us and get messages from them, get
Mm.
words of advice from them, or sometimes it's just resources. Here's some confidence. You can take it with you. I've built it up for the last 10 years, but now you can take it back and it'll be even stronger when we get here next time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when you do the future self stuff, is it a healthy future self, or you like frame it like this is a future self that's nearing the end of life and looking back? Do you preface it either way there?
So the only time I will have them connect with a future self that's not that maybe their best future self
Hmm.
is when I'm helping people with some kind of an addiction.
Oh,
And usually if they're coming to me and they have an addiction, they're like ready for anything. Like they don't care what it's going to take.
yeah.
And so then sometimes I'll get a little bit dark with them and like, okay, let's go into this future where you haven't conquered this addiction yet. And let's go through this with the person that you love the most.
Oh,
And let's
wow.
see what happens. And
Yeah.
let's go through it in their experience,
Mm.
watching this version of you die.
Mm.
And that can be a really powerful way to shift their mindset around to about what they're doing into connecting with the future. However, we don't do that only because this is about empowerment. This
Yeah.
isn't about like you're being bad or anything like that.
Right.
This is about let's get you to where you want to be and connect with this future you. So for the instance, to your answer, I don't necessarily tell them where to go into the future. I'll just have them be that future who is that future self who's put the stuff behind them. Maybe it's a year in the future, maybe it's 5 years in the future. Doesn't
Yeah.
It's kind of up to them to make that
Yeah.
decision.
I love looking at like my oldest possible future self.
Mm,
Like, and I don't know how long I'm gonna live, but I always put myself like in my 80s or my 90s. And what would like 92-year-old Jerrod say to right now to this Jerrod who maybe wants to be lazy today, or maybe
Yeah,
doesn't want to do what I know I'm supposed to do to build business or whatever, you know? And I'm like,
right.
and I don't sit like that version of Jerrod doesn't ever say, take it easy, big guy, I got it. Like, no, he's like, get
What does he say?
get to work, lazy. Like, you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? He's like, dude, I'm counting on you. Like, I don't get to be 95-year-old just relaxed and sitting here looking at you if you don't do the shit you're supposed to do today.
Yeah.
But I think that's
Beautiful
all.
reframe.
It works for me, you
Yeah.
know. But Joshua, tell me this. So you're facing fears and you're going through anxiety and doubts as you make these changes. Yet you go into something like hypnotist, and not everybody's going to believe in that. Not everybody's going to see as a viable life option.
Sure.
How did you handle building the confidence to go, wait a second, no, I can do this?
Well, it was helpful to have a mentor who is successful doing it. So I
Yeah.
knew successful people. Really early on, I recognized because I had already built a performance business, and my performance sideshow arts. That is again another one of those things that is not necessarily, it's not a juggler, it's not a band, right? So it's one of those off the wall kinds of things. So I was kind of used to, let's just figure this out. Let's try this. We'll put it out there. But also, when I did the performing gig, I had reached out to other people that had built variety acts, and they helped by giving me advice, like showing me how they did things. And then I would use their methods and kind of add my own way into it to create this. So when I was training as a hypnotist, before I even had my certification, I had found a successful hypnotist who had made a business out of helping other hypnotists grow a business. And I knew early on that it was going to take as much or more to build the business as it was going to take to learn to do the techniques and all that
Mm,
sort of thing. Like you can learn the stuff, but if you don't have clients coming in the door, you're not actually going to be very successful.
sure.
And my main thing was this is going to be how I make a living, not just a hobby. So how I did it was I worked with somebody who was already successful. I followed his teachings, followed his techniques, uh, and I continue to do a lot of training on the business side as well as the hypnotic side.
Yeah. Share with me this, Joshua, because this is one of the things I always like to look for clues in success and commonality. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to successful people like yourself. And one of the basic foundations to that success is they get a mentor or they follow somebody who's already doing it instead of trying to recreate everything themselves. Talk
Mhm.
to me, like share with our community, how do they put the ego aside to say, wait a sec, I can learn from other people when I'm trying to rebuild myself or trying to create that growth, yet keep up enough boundaries that only the people they should be listening to are giving them input. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's a challenge,
Right.
because if you're a business owner or entrepreneur, we get really distracted by shiny things. and and we think, oh, this is where I need to go. Oh, this is where I need to go. So the way that I did that is like I said, I found one mentor. Uh, he clearly was successful. He had a step-by-step program to follow, and I just followed his program. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Clearly, I don't know everything. And but this was a lesson that I had learned early on. So through those 20s, early 30s, I had been so afraid that I might look stupid, that when I was talking to somebody and we were just talking about something and they were talking about something that I didn't know, I would never admit that I didn't know
Mm.
everything about that thing. And so because of that, I never learned shit. They would talk about, and I'd pretend that I knew what they were talking about, but I didn't actually learn anything.
Yeah.
And I realized eventually that that was actually hurting me. Like they don't think any less of me if I say, "Oh, I don't actually know anything about that. Can you share something about that?" They actually love that because
Right.
people they want to share the knowledge that they have. And so I learned that I don't know everything, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the growth versus a fixed mindset,
Oh yeah.
probably, as you know, just knowing what your podcast is about. But that's what this is. This is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And fixed mindset is basically who I was in my 20s. I know everything. And if I don't know it, I guess I'm not going to get there. Like, a fixed mindset believes that you have a certain amount of innate intelligence or talent. And some people have a lot, some people have a little, and you're just kind of born with it. A growth mindset believes that you can always learn, you can always get better, and there's no limit to what you can learn.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting you said in the 20s, because I would 100%, if you met me in my 20s, I was the most arrogant, egotistical. I knew everything about everything. If I didn't know it, I wasn't supposed to learn it person, right?
yeah,
And now that I'm in my 50s, one of my favorite things to say is, I have no idea. You tell
yeah,
me. You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's
Teach
way
me.
more fun that way.
Yeah, and and I know it wasn't just a me thing. It's a
Yeah.
pretty common thing for sure. Um, to have that same kind of an experience, right? To think that when you're young, yeah, just know it all. Uh, yeah, I lost what we were chatting about there, but
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah,
the
I
growth
think,
mindset versus the fixed mindset.
yeah, I love it. So when did you when did it dawn on you that, like, wait a second, I can take this from a sideshow art and really make it a really dive deep into a personal growth and development to take people that are already achieving, but help them achieve more. When
Hmm.
did that strike you as, like, wait, I can do this with this as well?
That occurred basically when I worked with that hypnotist to move past the fear around the move. And that experience was so powerful that it put that in my mind, so that when I saw that Facebook ad that's like, "Hey, interested in learning about hypnotherapy? Come to this meeting." And so then I was like, "Oh, that's right. That really helped me back then."
Mhm.
I've been doing a lot of work to try to become the best version of me, and it's pretty slow.
Yeah,
What could happen if I both worked with a hypnotist and learned how to do this? I bet going through the whole process would help me transform my life too, because I'm going to have to do some of this work. So that was kind of the stuff that was going through my mind. And I knew people made a living off of this because I had started to do research on it. And you know, it felt easier to find clients doing this than to build up this sideshow act and
yeah,
try to make a performance as a business. So I went with what I felt was the right thing to do. Also, I in helping people, I enjoy learning. One of the
yeah,
things that I love about this is that I'm a lifelong learner, as you
yeah,
probably have guessed already. One of the things I love about this is you're always learning. Every client has a different way of seeing the world, and you have to shift things a little bit for everyone. And not only that, but all of the hypnotherapists or coaches or NLP practitioners that are out there, we all do things a little bit different.
sure.
And we all go to these different conferences and we teach each other the little bit different way that we do things. And so you're always learning, bringing in new tools. And that is just fascinating to me, how, that's that growth mindset again.
Right.
What else can I learn? How can I do this a little bit differently?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. How do you use hypnotist or hypnosis, I'm sorry, to get people to align with their life's purpose? How does that work for someone?
A lot of times it's helping them to get, I mean, the way that I look at it is we already have
Mhm.
all the information that we need. Like we have all the wisdom inside. We just get in our own way. Hypnosis can help you get into a relaxed and a focused state so that you can get some answers from, call it the unconscious mind, call it the future self, however you want to think about it. Like there's a lot of ways to think about this part of us that is something more than the conscious mind.
Right.
But it lets us tune into that. And that's when we get wisdom. That's when we get knowledge. That's when we learn how our bodies are working. So a lot of what I'm doing to start with people is I'm helping them calm their nervous system, because most people are running around and their nervous system is just on edge, and we're feeling anxiety and fear all the time. And maybe we don't even know it because we've just been used to that this is just how life is. So once you can calm your nervous system so that you can start to choose how you respond in situations instead of just automatic reacting and triggering and all that stuff, now you are actually a human being and you can make choices from this place of calm, of resilience, of confidence, of like a real confidence. So not like a egotistic kind of confidence, the kind of confidence where you might not know everything, but you know that you'll figure out what you need to do when
Right.
the situation is there.
Interesting. What are so we're kind of getting them out of their own way is what I'm hearing there. You're getting, because that's really what happens to a lot of us is the life we assume and the task and all the to-dos of the day life get in the way of us really remembering who we were supposed to be or who we wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Who we are.
Right? Who we are deep down if we'd actually can get to it again, right? Where it kind of
Yeah.
gets buried under the
Yeah.
layers of life.
Yeah. Life has a way of doing that.
It does. So you get them in there. Are you finding that hang on, let me think that they're just giving you the answers that are already within them. You're kind of just mining out the answers that they already know, or is it this a place they get to open to new inputs and changes of things?
I'm a guide,
Yeah.
so I help them find that internal wisdom. I'm not telling them what that internal wisdom is. I might point out some possibilities, but even then, I'm not very likely to do that
Okay.
because that's like, yeah, who's going to listen to the guy telling you what to do?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
But if I'm just asking, most of the time I'm asking questions so that they can so they can get out of themselves the
Mhm.
answers.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the big ahas. Like that's the difference between like a coach and a consultant. Like a consultant, they're going to come in, they're going to tell you what to do to get the job done. A coach is going to ask you questions so that you can tell him or her or them or whatever,
Right.
tell yourself what it is that you need to get the job done.
That's a fantastic delineation right there. I think you're 100% right. So Joshua, talk to me about this. What are some of the misconceptions that people have about altered states of consciousness and how it can actually help them in their lives? And how do we address that? How do we overcome some of that?
Well, there's a stigma, obviously, for altered states of consciousness. I think when you hear that term, the first thing you're going to think of is drugs.
Yeah.
And uh, the I have found a lot of value in, I'll call them sacred medicines or plant medicines, because
Yeah.
that's really what they are. In that they can help. Uh, like we've measured this. We've used in uh, brain scanning to measure that when people take, say, magic mushrooms, so psilocybin, for example, the brain is starting to connect in ways that it doesn't normally connect. Now, the problem that we generally have is our brain is always trying to be efficient and use as little energy as possible. So this is like the neuroscience behind our problems, right?
Yeah.
And so what it does is it looks for pathways.
Mm.
And when I say a pathway, it is a literal pathway of neurons connected to neurons within the brain. These pathways are developed throughout our life, usually when something happens that's emotional, and then we figure out how to get through that situation, we've created a pathway.
Yep.
An example for that could be something like anxiety, right? Uh, you're a kid, probably 5 years old or something like that. Something scary happens. You feel anxious, and so you go away from the scary thing, and now you're safe, meaning you didn't die. Boom,
Yeah.
pathway created. You go through life, and now when other scary things happen and the anxiety comes up, you go away from it and you're safe. It works great. This pathway, so there's something called neuroplasticity, probably a term that you've heard.
Yeah.
Neuroplasticity is how the brain strengthens these pathways that are getting used. So now that kid is using this anxiety pathway to stay safe in all of these different situations. This pathway gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It's becoming the path of least resistance. It's becoming literally a super highway. So now, where maybe this only was in one particular situation, now this pathway is getting used in all kinds of situations. And you are telling yourself, well, I'm just an anxious person.
Mm.
You're not an anxious person. I mean, you might be experiencing a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
but you are inherently not an anxious person. None of us are. We are born perfect. Then life happens and the brain does what it does. It's supposed to be efficient and effective and keep us safe,
Yeah.
meaning don't die. Not necessarily to thrive, though.
Yeah.
So, what I'm helping people to do is learn how to, first of all, calm their nervous system so that when they're in these situations where they used to feel anxiety, they have things they can do now, physical things they can do with their body to calm themselves down. So that's what one thing that we do. But then we uncover what are the programs that are running, like what are these things that happened that created this program in the first place. We use hypnotic techniques to clear those out, to basically heal that stuff.
Mm.
Um, Learn the lesson that needed to really be learned back then, or give that younger you whatever it was they need, or get the parts to work together. There's lots of ways to do this.
Yeah.
And if from a neuroscience point of view, what we do is we talk about the problem that activates the neurons. Then we use these processes to send those neurons down a new pathway again and again and again, using neuroplasticity to strengthen the new
Yeah.
pathway and to weaken the old one. That is change work right there in every situation, every kind of technique, whether it's hypnosis or altered states, like, okay, coming back to psilocybin.
Yeah.
The whole point of all of that is it connects your brain in different ways. I've heard it described like if like our brain is like a ski hill. We've got all these pathways that are running down the hill that the same people, or not the same, everybody runs down the same pathways. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So the pathways are pretty strong. They're pretty powerful. You just slide right down them. Psilocybin or any kind of psychedelic, ketamine was the one that I was talking with somebody about recently, uh, or hypnosis is another way to do this. Altered states
Yeah.
essentially are like a fresh snow that covers the whole mountaintop. And now you have an opportunity to create a new pathway. That is what's so powerful about, for example, psychedelics, because
Yeah.
they just do that. You take the medicine, it does it. Um, with hypnosis, we're doing that in a little bit different of a way. There's other ways to do this as well. Breath work is a great
Mm.
way to also create that neuroplasticity. Um, Music is a
Yeah.
way to do that. Meditation is a way to do that. Powerful sexual experiences are a way to do that. Like there's a lot of ways to alter our consciousness
Mm.
and then to create change. Most of the time we alter it and then we don't create change, but that's
Right.
okay too. Like that's recreational altered
Right.
states of consciousness is still recreating. You still have the opportunity there.
So with this, what do you think, Joshua? It's getting more mainstream again, the altered states, the cyber, a lot. It's coming up in both governmental terms and in a lot of social media. People are saying, wait a second, there's different ways to do this besides prescription drugs or
Mhm.
outside of what has been norm in the past. How do we how do we stay safe to continue to allow this to be medicine, because that's what I believe it is too, right? It's natural
Yeah.
medicines.
Yeah.
How do we continue to move forward but stay safe with that so that we don't revert back to, kind of like, in the 60s, LSD was being studied, mushrooms were pretty prevalent, and then in the 70s, we had a bunch of laws against it, and it stayed that way for quite a while.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? How do we balance bringing it forward scientifically and for our own growth and development, yet balance out that other side for abuse, I guess is the best way to think of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that in two ways. So the first of all, the reason that it got outlawed in the first place had nothing to do with safety.
Right.
Absolutely nothing to do with safety. It was control.
Yep.
And that's really sad because there was so much research being done, both on LSD and on psilocybin and other medicines as well, that was having such fantastic, amazing, incredible results with people, like with people that are dealing with cancer, with people that were dealing with addiction, with people that were dealing with PTSD. They were having such fantastic results, and then they had to shut it all down because of government policy, which was just afraid that people were feeling a little bit too much open-hearted and loving. I mean, you can't have that if you want to have a war.
That's true.
I mean,
That's
that
true.
is ultimately what happened there. So I think things have shifted, and that is no longer there. But now we're dealing with these decades and decades of ingrained
Right.
beliefs that, oh, if you take ecstasy, you're going to get holes in your brain. Never happened, but
Right.
it was certainly, people still think that it actually happened, but it never actually happened.
Right.
Um, you can't die from an overdose of marijuana, but we have reefer madness out there
Yeah.
that was,
Those
there's
are
all of the
crazy
stuff that
movies.
was all of the stuff that was really trying to, it was propaganda was what
Yeah,
it was.
for sure.
And because people grew up with that, that's part of what's in our mind is this stuff is wrong, this stuff is bad. So that's the first thing that I'll
Yeah.
say. The second thing is definitely if you don't have any experience with these things, find somebody to help as a guide. If you want to meet some of those people, I have a podcast called Super States, superstatespodcast.com, where I interview a lot of those kind of people, and their contact information is out there. So there's ways, and there's other ways too. Like you don't have to do that, but
Yeah.
these people are out there. They want to help, but do your research too,
Yeah.
because there's also I'll give a good example. If I put a post on Facebook speaking about one of my guests who talks about psilocybin, I am going to get probably at least 5 responses from some random people who say, "Hey, great podcast. My friend Joe is a psilocybin expert, and here's how you can get in touch with him to do microdosing. It saved my life." And then they'll give you his Instagram channel. Don't ever use those people. Those are scam people. Don't ever use
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But you're gonna find that stuff. So find somebody reputable, talk to them, uh, interview them, learn if they're a good fit. There's enough people out there that are going to be able to help you that and you can also go with something like ketamine, which is totally legal.
Mhm.
There are experts that are psychologists that are out there helping people use this in a way that can be very safe, very powerful, and very controlled. So, there's whatever kind of experience you want to have, you're gonna be able to find it.
Yeah. What do you think it is that's bringing us back to our roots? Because that's what I kind of consider. This is a lot of what we're doing now is not new to us. We've known it for generations. Native Americans used it before we were even here, right? And I mean,
We use our cultures.
yeah.
I mean, I'll say all cultures
Yep.
have used this uh, throughout time.
Yep.
It's only recently that it got shut down, and that would be a whole nother podcast if we
For
wanted to
sure.
talk about that. But
Yeah.
but so yeah, so definitely we're going back to our roots. Like humans, there's something about ecstatic states that is important to humans because rock and roll, the reason rock and roll is so amazingly powerful is because it is an ecstatic state.
Yep.
And it was one of the first kinds of music that had amplification behind it, which made it so much more impactful. Rock music is like tribal music that has been around since the dawn of time, like literally since humans had a fire and they were banging two sticks together or rocks
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
or just singing. We've been practicing altered states, ecstatic states to gather information about our world, ourselves, the plants around us. There's so much more available to us than we realize, and because we've shut it down in our modern society.
Yeah, I agree with that, Josh. And I think it's also a testimony to where we are currently. And that is we have so much information at our fingertips that we can now choose, right? Do I want to
Yeah,
experience something different? Do I want to maybe move past some of the layers that I've built up over all these years that are now so ingrained that I can't necessarily do it by myself? Maybe I need a little bit of help to really get back to who I wanted to be. And that's what I love. As much as technology gets bashed in certain circles and stuff, I love the fact that I can go on right now and look you up, go to your show
yeah,
and learn something new. And maybe I don't even agree with it. Maybe I can go find something I totally don't think I agree with just so I can learn.
yeah, right.
And
It's we live in a pretty amazing age.
nothing's trying to eat me. Nothing's trying to kill me when I walk down the street. Like there's no saber-toothed tigers. So,
Right,
which I think is that key, right? Because like you said earlier, our mind is designed to work as efficiently as possible and keep us safe. And now because we don't have a lot of those natural threats, that safety piece gets confused, right? The safety can
absolutely.
be anxious about everything, fearful of the unknown, fearful of
Yeah,
just following my dreams. I'm so afraid to just believe in myself.
yeah.
And
What
that's where
might
I,
happen?
right, oh my gosh, I'll be successful, which is what I love what you're doing, right? Is because you're getting back to who I'm really supposed to be and helping me see it.
Yeah.
So, what would you say, Joshua, to somebody that's skeptical about hypnosis and on the fence about exploring its benefits for them? What would you say to that listener?
Well, the thing is, you don't have to believe or disbelieve in hypnosis. It is a thing. There's you can measure it with instruments and see that the changes happen in the brain when it happens. Ever since humans have talked, we've been using hypnotic techniques. It's the same thing that shamans do. It's just
Yeah.
modernized. And not that I'm saying I'm a shaman. I'm just say it's a similar kind of technique that uh, has been around again, probably since we've been banging sticks together in a different, in its own way. And so what I would say is have an open mind and it now also know that you don't have to use hypnosis. There's lots of ways to make change. I like hypnosis because I like to use words and I like how words can shape reality. And one of the one of the ways I look at reality is I believe this all of this is held together with words. Like it's literally
Mm,
held together with the stories that we tell ourselves, both
for sure.
both at a micro level, like your personal story, right? We all have, I already told
Yeah.
you my story. And but it's also at a macro level. We have history, his story. We have uh we have the Bible, right? Books that from times. We have the myths throughout time. Even I even think of the Big Bang as a story that we're telling that's holding all of this together.
Yeah.
But we can change our story. And when you change your story, it's going to change your life because my story used to be I'm not enough and blah 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 blah. But I don't tell myself that story anymore. I
Yeah.
tell myself a different story that actually is more empowering and impactful and makes a difference to my life.
Yeah. I love how you said you got to have an open mind, right? You got to be open mind to what it is you want in this life and what it is you want. And like you said, what it is you want to be telling yourself. And that's probably the most powerful story we have going is the one we're telling ourselves that nobody else can see.
Yeah. And the other thing to know about hypnosis, and I use the word hypnosis because it does have a charge to it.
Yeah.
And I've tried this. I'll go to a lot of networking events, and I used to introduce myself as a hypnotherapist, which I'm certified as. Most people's eyes glaze over and they're like, "Oh, I don't need a therapist," and then they walk away.
Yeah.
When I introduce myself as a hypnotist, their eyes light up, or
Mm.
they go, "Stay away from me." But either way, their eyes are lighting up and there's something that happens. And
Yeah.
then we have a conversation. Even if they do this, I just go, "You're going to have an amazing day." And then they laugh and then we talk, right?
Yeah.
So, and most people have had some kind of experience at a show or a relative who used hypnosis to quit smoking or something like that. And so
Right.
a conversation happens. So I like to use it because of that, because it does have a charge to it. But there's other things. There's some, you probably know what NLP is. So neuro linguistic
Yeah.
programming. It's a very conversational style of hypnosis, but it doesn't use the term hypnosis. It just
Yeah.
uses a different term. Many coaching processes are using NLP types of things and using hypnosis as well. A guided meditation, that is a form of hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like you're probably already doing it. You just don't realize it. Hypnosis is a focused, relaxed state
Mm.
where you have access to those internal resources that you just don't always have access to.
I love it, Josh. Thank you so much for joining me this week and sharing your knowledge with our community. Where can we stay in touch with you, and where can our community come to you for further information on this?
Absolutely. I got two ways for that.
Let's
So
do it.
my main website is xfactorhypnosis.com. And pretty much there's links to everything in there. There's links to all my social media. There's links to my podcast. I have a YouTube channel, which is really just the podcast as a YouTube channel as well. So you can find everything there. And if your listeners are interested in kind of having a little bit of an experience, I have been building out a way for someone to get a hypnotic experience using both emails and some guided recordings. And so I have what this does is it helps you get past a block. Think of it like a fear, a worry, or an anxiety, something that's held you back in about a week,
Oh,
and it'll
nice.
clear it out. So what I'll do is if you go to xfactorhypnosis.com/on purpose, that will take you to a free version of that.
Ah, thanks, Joshua. That's awesome for our community.
I appreciate you having me on the show, Jared.
Ah, it's been a pleasure. Man, I can't wait to keep in touch with you and to follow along. And I've enjoyed the podcast. I listened to it a couple times over the weekend to get ready for this interview. So I just want to take a moment, Joshua, and thank you for believing in yourself. Thank you for wanting more in your life, and then having the courage to share that story with all of us so that we can grow alongside you.
Oh, I appreciate you, Jared. Thank you so much for having me on the show and for sharing the message.